Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his mining shuttle through the asteroid field. The small ship groaned under the weight of precious metals he had collected that morning. Another good day's work on the edge of human space, far from the wars and politics that had taken everything from him. The asteroid belt around Kepler-7 was quiet. Most miners avoided this sector because the rocks here were smaller and harder to crack. Marcus preferred it that way. Fewer people meant fewer questions about his past. The mining station administrators didn't care where he came from as long as he paid his docking fees and kept to himself. His scanner beeped softly. Marcus frowned at the display. There was something large moving between two asteroids ahead, too big to be another mining ship and the wrong shape for a cargo hauler. He adjusted his course to get a better look. What he saw made his blood run cold. A ship unlike anything he had ever seen was wedged between two massive rocks. Its hull was dark purple with strange silver markings that seemed to shift in the light. Long and curved like a blade, it was clearly not human-made. Scorch marks covered its surface and one wing was completely torn away. Marcus had been a soldier before becoming a miner. He knew a crash site when he saw one. He brought his shuttle closer, fighting every instinct that told him to turn around and forget what he had seen. Unknown alien ships meant trouble. The kind of trouble that brought government investigators and military squadrons. The kind of trouble Marcus had spent 3 years trying to avoid. But there might be survivors inside. His military training kicked in as he docked with the alien vessel. The airlocks were different but worked on similar principles. After several minutes of careful work, he managed to create a seal between the two ships. The inside of the alien ship was dark and filled with strange, sweet-smelling air. Marcus pulled on his breathing mask and activated his helmet light. The corridor ahead was too tall for humans, with smooth walls that curved like the inside of a shell. He found them in what looked like a control room. The adult alien was dying. That much was clear, even though Marcus had never seen this species before. The creature was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its large black eyes were losing focus, but they tracked to Marcus as he entered the room. Beside the dying alien sat a smaller version of the same species. A child, Marcus realized. The little one was shaking with fear, pressed against the adult's side. The dying alien reached for something near its chest. A small device began to glow, and suddenly Marcus could understand its words. "Please," the alien whispered, his voice weak but desperate. "Please, you must protect her. They are coming. The slavers. They want to take my daughter." Marcus knelt beside them. "Who's coming?" "What slavers?" "Cortex," the alien said, and the translation device made the name sound like a curse. "They hunt my people. My wife. They have my wife. We tried to escape, but they shot us down." The child looked up at Marcus with enormous dark eyes filled with tears that glowed faintly blue. She said something in her own language, and the translation device spoke for her. "Is my papa going to die?" Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He had seen too many children in war zones. Too many families torn apart by violence. He had promised himself he would never get involved again. But looking at this frightened child, he knew he couldn't walk away. "What's your daughter's name?" Marcus asked the dying alien. "Zira," the father said. "She is very young, only 7 cycles. She cannot defend herself. I'll protect her," Marcus said, not sure why he was making this promise to a dying stranger. The alien's eyes brightened slightly. "You would do this for us?" "Yes." The father reached out with one of his forehands and touched Marcus's arm. Suddenly, images flashed through Marcus's mind. He saw the alien's memories of his wife. A beautiful creature with the same pale blue skin and dark eyes. He felt the father's love for his daughter, pure and desperate. And he understood somehow that this family had been running for their lives. "Her name is Lirelai," the father whispered. "My wife, if you can. If she still lives. Tell her that Korath kept his promise. I brought our daughter to safety." The alien's breathing stopped. His hand fell away from Marcus's arm. Marcus looked at the child, Zira, who was staring at her father's still form. She let out a sound that needed no translation. The sound of a heart breaking. That's when Marcus heard the other ships approaching. His scanner chirped a warning through his comlink. 3 vessels moving fast toward their position. Marcus ran back to his shuttle and checked the displays. The ships were blocky and aggressive-looking, covered in weapons and painted flat black. Pirates or slavers, just like the father had warned. Marcus made a decision that would change his life forever. He ran back to Zira and gently took her hand. "We have to go. Right now." She looked up at him with those enormous dark eyes and nodded. She understood the danger, even through her grief. Marcus led her quickly to his shuttle, sealing the airlock behind them just as the slaver ships came into view. He strapped Zira into the co-pilot seat and fired up his engines. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Vex of the Cortex Syndicate." A harsh voice crackled over the comm. "You are interfering with our salvage operation. Surrender any survivors immediately." Marcus switched off his comm and pushed his shuttle's engines to maximum power. The ship shot forward between the asteroids, using the rocky cover to break visual contact with the slavers. "Where can we go?" he asked Zira. The child touched his arm the same way her father had. Again, images flashed through Marcus's mind. This time he saw a space station crowded with ships and people. Kepler 7, his own home base. "That's where we're going anyway," Marcus said. "Maybe we can lose them there." But even as he said it, Marcus knew they weren't safe yet. The Cortex had found Zira's family once. They could do it again. And from what he had seen in the alien father's memories, these slavers were very good at hunting their prey. The little girl beside him made a soft sound, almost like a cat purring. When Marcus looked at her, she was staring at him with something that might have been trust. Marcus had been a soldier, a killer, a broken man trying to forget his past. But looking at Zira, he remembered something he thought he had lost forever, the need to protect someone who couldn't protect themselves. "Don't worry, kid," he said softly. "I've got you now." Behind them, the slaver ships were spreading out, beginning a systematic search of the asteroid field. They had lost sight of Marcus's shuttle, but they weren't giving up. Marcus flew deeper into the maze of floating rocks, using every trick he had learned in 3 years of mining to stay hidden. But he knew this was just the beginning. The Cortex wouldn't stop hunting for Zira, and somehow, Marcus had become the only thing standing between this alien child and a life of slavery. He thought about the father's dying words and the images of the mother, Lyrelai, somewhere in enemy hands. Maybe protecting Zira was just the first step. Maybe there was more he needed to do. But first, they had to survive the next few hours. Marcus brought his shuttle into Kepler 7 station 3 hours later, using a fake ID code he had bought from a smuggler years ago. The mining station was busy as always, with dozens of ships coming and going. Perfect cover for 2 fugitives. Zira had been quiet during the flight, sitting very still in her seat. Sometimes Marcus caught her staring at him with those large, dark eyes. She hadn't spoken since they left the crash site, but he could feel her fear like a weight in the air. "Stay close to me," Marcus told her as they walked through the station's docking bay. "And try to keep your head down." Zira nodded and pulled the hood of an emergency jacket over her distinctive blue skin and large head. To most humans, she might look like a child wearing an odd costume. Marcus hoped that would be enough. The station administrator, a fat man named Brooks, was waiting at the customs checkpoint. Marcus's heart sank. Brooks never bothered with routine inspections unless someone was paying him extra. "Chen," Brooks said, looking Marcus up and down. "Hear you had some excitement out in Sector 7 today?" "Just mining," Marcus replied. "Same as always." Brooks smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Funny thing. Got some folks asking about crashed ships, alien ships. Said they'd pay good money for information." Marcus kept his face blank. "Haven't seen any aliens. You know me, Brooks. I mind my own business." "That you do," Brooks agreed. "But these folks are real insistent. Cortex Syndicate, they call themselves. Left a nice deposit for any useful tips." Behind Marcus, Zira pressed closer to his back. He could feel her trembling. "Well, if I see any aliens, you'll be the first to know," Marcus said. Brooks looked disappointed but waved them through. "See that I am, Chen. These Cortex types don't seem like the patient sort." Marcus led Zira quickly through the station's main corridor, past the shops and bars where miners spent their earnings. They needed somewhere safe to hide while he figured out their next move. His apartment was in the station's lower levels, in a section that used to house maintenance equipment. The rooms were small and the air recycling was poor, but it was private. Marcus had chosen it specifically because his neighbors minded their own business. Once they were inside with the door locked, Zira finally spoke. "The bad men found us," she said, and the small translation device on her chest turned her words into English. "Not yet," Marcus said, "but they're looking." Zira sat on Marcus's old couch, her legs too short to reach the floor. She looked very small and very alone. My papa said you would protect me, she said. I will, Marcus promised. But I need to understand what's happening. Why do these Kortheks want you so badly? Zira was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched Marcus's hand. The world exploded into images and emotions. Marcus saw Zira's home world, a beautiful planet with purple skies and silver cities. He felt the love of her people, the Veltar who shared their emotions and thoughts through touch. He understood that they were telepaths able to sense feelings and sometimes memories, but he also saw the darker truth. The Korthek Syndicate hunted Veltar children because their telepathic abilities made them valuable. Young Veltar could be trained to read minds, to detect lies, to break mental defenses. In the hands of criminals, they became perfect tools for blackmail, interrogation, and worse. Your mother, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. They have your mother, and they're using her abilities for their crimes. Zira nodded, tears glowing blue on her cheeks. Mama is strong. She tries to resist, but they hurt her when she doesn't help them. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. He had seen too much cruelty in the war, too many innocents caught in the crossfire. But this was different. This was a family deliberately torn apart by greed. Where is she? He asked. More images flashed through his mind. A facility on a moon somewhere, heavily guarded and surrounded by defensive systems. Lirelai, Zira's mother, locked in a small room and forced to use her abilities to crack encrypted communications for the Syndicate. We have to help her, Zira said. Marcus almost laughed. Kid, I'm just one man. That place you showed me is a fortress. Papa said humans are different, Zira said. He said humans fight even when they cannot win. He said that's why you're special. Before Marcus could respond, his door chimed. He motioned for Zira to stay quiet and checked the security screen. A woman stood in the hallway outside. She was tall and thin, with short black hair and the kind of pale skin that came from spending too much time in recycled air. Marcus recognized her as Dr. Sarah Kim, a researcher who had arrived on the station a few weeks ago. Marcus opened the door carefully. Dr. Kim, what can I do for you? May I come in? She asked. I think we need to talk about your young friend. Marcus's hand moved toward the gun under his jacket. I don't know what you mean. The Veltar child, Dr. Kim said calmly. I saw you both in the corridor. I specialize in xenobiology, Mr. Chen. I know what I'm looking at. Marcus stared at her for a moment, then stepped aside. Dr. Kim entered and closed the door behind her. Zira looked up from the couch, her large eyes curious rather than afraid. Hello, little one, Dr. Kim said gently. My name is Sarah. I study different species from across the galaxy. Are you going to turn us in? Marcus asked. Dr. Kim shook her head. The Kortheks approached me earlier. They wanted to know if I had seen any unusual aliens. I told them no, which was true at the time. She knelt down in front of Zira. I've been studying your people for years, but only from old records and distant observations. The Veltar haven't made contact with the galactic community in over 2 centuries. Because of the hunters, Zira said quietly. Yes, Dr. Kim agreed. Because too many species saw your abilities as something to be used rather than respected. Marcus felt some of his tension. Ease. Dr. Kim seemed genuine in her concern for Zira. The Kortheks will keep searching. Dr. Kim continued. This station isn't safe for either of you. Where can we go? Marcus asked. Away from here, Dr. Kim said. I have a small research ship. It's not much, but it's faster than most mining shuttles. Marcus studied her face. Why would you help us? Dr. Kim smiled sadly. Because I've spent my career studying species that went extinct. Because others saw them as resources instead of people. I won't let that happen to the Veltar if I can help it. Zira reached out and touched Dr. Kim's hand. The scientist's eyes widened as she experienced the telepathic contact for the first time. She's telling the truth, Zira said to Marcus. She wants to help. Remarkable, Dr. Kim whispered. I can feel your emotions, your trust. It's like nothing I've ever experienced. Marcus made his decision. How soon can we leave? Give me 2 hours to prepare my ship, Dr. Kim said. But Mr. Chen, you should know what you're getting into. The Kortheks won't give up easily. Once they mark you as a target, they'll hunt you across the galaxy if necessary. Marcus looked at Zira, who was watching him with hope in her large, dark eyes. He thought about her father's dying words and the images of her mother suffering in captivity. Then we better make sure we're hard to catch, he said. Dr. Kim nodded approvingly. I'll send you the coordinates for my ship. Docking Bay 7, Level 3. After she left, Marcus began gathering his few possessions. He had lived a quiet life on Kepler 7, but that life was over now. The moment he had chosen to protect Zira, he had chosen a path that led away from safety and toward something much more dangerous. But looking at the alien child who trusted him completely, Marcus found he didn't regret his decision. Are you scared? Zira asked. Marcus considered the question honestly. Yes, he said. But sometimes being scared means you're doing something important. Zira smiled for the first time since he had met her. It transformed her entire face, making her look like what she was. A child who still believed the world could be made right. Marcus just hoped he could live up to that faith. 3 days later, Marcus was beginning to understand why the Cortex Syndicate had such a fearsome reputation. No matter where they ran, the slavers seemed to find them within hours. Dr. Kim's research ship, the Pioneer, was indeed faster than Marcus's old mining shuttle. But speed meant nothing when your enemies always knew where you were going. They're tracking us somehow, Dr. Kim said as they jumped into another star system, their fourth in 2 days. I've run every scan I can think of. There's no tracking device on the ship. Marcus looked at Zira, who was curled up in one of the ship's small passenger seats. The constant running was taking its toll on her. She barely ate and hardly spoke, even when Marcus asked her direct questions. Maybe they're tracking her, Marcus said quietly, making sure Zira couldn't hear. Some kind of biological marker? Possible, Dr. Kim agreed. But I don't have the equipment to detect something like that. And even if I did, I wouldn't know how to remove it safely. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm from the ship's sensors. 3 ships were approaching fast, their signatures matching the Cortex vessels that had been chasing them. How is this possible? Dr. Kim demanded, bringing the Pioneer's engines online. We just jumped here. There's no way they could have followed us so quickly. Marcus strapped himself in as the ship accelerated. Through the viewport, he could see the Cortex ships closing in. They were bigger than the Pioneer and heavily armed. Can we outrun them? He asked. Not for long, Dr. Kim said grimly. They're military-grade ships. This is a research vessel. That's when Zira spoke up from her seat. They're not following the ship, she said quietly. They're following me. Marcus and Dr. Kim both turned to look at her. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Zira touched her temple with one small blue finger. Before they took Papa and me, they put something in my head. A tracker. Papa tried to remove it, but he said it was too dangerous. Marcus felt cold fear settle in his stomach. Can you sense it? This tracker? Zira nodded. It hurts sometimes. Like a tiny light that won't go out. Dr. Kim was already pulling up medical scans on her computer. I might be able to remove it surgically, but it would be extremely dangerous. If it's connected to her brain functions, and I could die. Zira finished calmly. The ship shook as weapons fire from the Cortex vessels began to find their range. Dr. Kim threw the Pioneer into a series of evasive maneuvers. But Marcus could see they wouldn't be able to escape this time. There, Zira said, pointing to a large asteroid cluster ahead of them. Hide in there. Dr. Kim guided the ship into the maze of floating rocks, using them for cover as the Cortex ships followed. The asteroids were dense and unstable, a dangerous place for any ship to navigate. This is Captain Vex. The harsh voice came over their comm system. You cannot hide forever, human. Give us the child and we will let you live. Marcus grabbed the comm microphone. Go to hell, Vex. The response was immediate. The Cortex ships opened fire on the asteroids around them, trying to flush them out with explosive force. Chunks of rock flew past the viewport as their hiding place began to collapse. That's when Marcus made a decision that surprised even him. Dr. Kim, can you get close to their lead ship? Close enough to ram it if that's what you're thinking, she replied. But we won't survive the impact. I'm not planning to ram them, Marcus said. I'm planning to board them. Both Dr. Kim and Zira stared at him. That's insane, Dr. Kim said. Even if you could get aboard their ship, you'd be outnumbered 20-1. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But they want Zira alive. That gives me an advantage. He was already moving toward the ship's small equipment locker, pulling out an emergency spacesuit and a cutting torch. You can't leave me, Zira said. And for the first time since he'd met her, she sounded like a frightened child instead of someone wise beyond her years. Marcus knelt down beside her seat. I'm not leaving you. I'm going to end this so we don't have to keep running. How? Marcus smiled grimly. I'm going to have a conversation with Captain Vex about his career choices. The plan was simple and completely insane. Dr. Kim would bring the Pioneer close to the lead Cortex ship during the confusion of another asteroid bombardment. Marcus would use the cutting torch to breach their hull and board the enemy vessel. What happened after that would depend on how good his old military training still was. This is suicide, Dr. Kim said as she maneuvered their ship toward the enemy. Probably, Marcus agreed, sealing his helmet. But it's also the last thing they'll expect. The moment came faster than he was ready for. 1 second he was floating in the Pioneer's airlock, and the next he was drifting through space toward the hull of a Cortex warship. The cutting torch made short work of their outer armor. Marcus pulled himself through the hole he had created and found himself in some kind of storage compartment. The air was thin and tasted of metal and chemicals, but it was breathable. He could hear alarms going off throughout the ship. His boarding had been noticed. Marcus moved quickly through the corridors using his military training to navigate by sound and instinct. The Cortex crew were humanoid but larger than humans with gray skin and too many teeth. They carried energy weapons that could cut through the ship's own hull. Marcus had brought only a simple projectile pistol and a handful of grenades from Dr. Kim's emergency kit. Not much against a ship full of armed slavers, but sometimes the simplest weapons were the most effective. He found the bridge after 10 minutes of careful movement through the ship. Captain Vex was there, a huge Cortex with scars covering half his face. He was shouting orders at his crew, trying to coordinate the search for Marcus. "Sir," one of the crew members said, "the intruder is moving toward the bridge. Should we seal it off?" "No," Vex growled. "Let the human come to us. I want to kill him personally." That's when Marcus stepped through the bridge entrance with his pistol drawn. "Captain Vex, I presume," he said calmly. The bridge fell silent. 6 Cortex warriors stared at the lone human who had somehow made it through their security. "You are either very brave or very stupid," Vex said, reaching for his own weapon. "Both," Marcus replied, "but I'm also very tired of running from you." "Surrender now and I will make your death quick," Vex offered. Marcus smiled. "Counteroffer. You stop hunting the child and I don't blow up your ship." Vex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You have no explosives, human." "Our scanners would have detected them." Marcus held up one of the grenades. "Military-grade plasma charge. Your scanners probably mistook it for a power cell." The laughter stopped. "You're bluffing," Vex said, but his hand moved away from his weapon. "Am I?" Marcus asked. "There's one way to find out." For a long moment, the bridge was completely silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Then Vex made his move. Grabbing for his sidearm with surprising speed, Marcus was faster. The fight that followed was brief and brutal. Marcus had been trained to fight multiple opponents in close quarters, and the confined space of the bridge worked to his advantage. The Cortex were strong and tough, but they weren't used to fighting someone who moved like Marcus did. When the smoke cleared, Marcus was the only one left standing. "This is Marcus Chen aboard the Cortex vessel," he said into the ship's comm system. "I'm in control of the bridge. Any other Cortex ships in this system have 30 seconds to jump to hyperspace before I start shooting." He waited, watching the tactical display. The other 2 Cortex ships hesitated for a moment, then disappeared into hyperspace. "Dr. Kim," Marcus said over his personal comm, "it's safe to come aboard. We need to have a conversation with the ship's computer about where they're keeping Zira's mother." An hour later, they had their answer. Lirelai was being held on Cortex Station, a heavily fortified base in the outer rim. The facility was supposed to be impregnable, protected by defense systems and a full military garrison. "We can't assault a place like that," Dr. Kim said as they studied the intelligence files from the captured Cortex ship. "No," Marcus agreed, "but we don't have to assault it." He looked at Zira, who had been studying the same files with growing hope. "We're going to walk in through the front door," Marcus said, "and they're going to invite us in." The plan was Marcus's craziest idea yet, and that was saying something. They approached Cortex Station flying Captain Vex's captured warship, broadcasting the correct identification codes and acting like nothing had happened. Marcus wore Vex's armor, modified to fit his smaller human frame, while Dr. Kim and Zira hid in the ship's cargo hold. "Unknown vessel. This is Cortex Station Control. The voice crackled over the comm. Captain Vex, you're 3 days overdue for your scheduled return. Marcus deepened his voice and tried to sound like the dead slaver captain. Had some complications with the target. Requesting immediate docking for prisoner transfer. There was a pause. Prisoner transfer? Your mission was to retrieve the Veltar child. Change of plans, Marcus growled. I've got something better. A human who's been helping the targets. Command will want to question him personally. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus held his breath, knowing that everything depended on whether the station bought his story. You're cleared for docking bay 7, Captain. Security will meet you there. Marcus let out a slow breath. Understood. Vex out. Korthex station was exactly as ugly as Marcus had expected. Built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, it bristled with weapons and defensive shields. The docking bay was full of ships like the one Marcus was flying, all painted in the flat black colors of the Syndicate. Remember the plan, Marcus said to Zira as they prepared to disembark. Stay close to me, and when I give the signal, use your abilities to confuse their security systems. Zira nodded, though Marcus could feel her nervousness through the telepathic connection they had developed over the past week. She was scared, but she was also determined to save her mother. The security team waiting for them consisted of 6 heavily armed Korthex warriors. Their leader, a female with intricate scars covering her arms, stepped forward as Marcus emerged from the ship. Captain Vex, she said, then paused. You look different. Battle damage, Marcus replied, keeping his helmet visor down. Where's the interrogation chamber? I want to get started on this human immediately. The security leader hesitated. Sir, we've had no word from command about a human prisoner. Perhaps we should contact no one, Marcus snapped, putting all the authority he could muster into his voice. This operation is classified at the highest levels. Any unauthorized communication could compromise months of planning. It was a gamble, but it worked. The security leader nodded reluctantly. Of course, sir. This way. Marcus followed her deeper into the station, Zira walking silently beside him in the disguise of a captured prisoner. Dr. Kim brought up the rear, playing the role of a frightened captive. The inside of Korthex Station was a maze of corridors and chambers carved from the asteroid's rock. Everything was painted in dark colors and the air smelled of oil and unwashed bodies. This was a place built for cruelty and violence. They passed several checkpoints, each one making Marcus more nervous. His disguise was holding up, but barely. If anyone looked too closely at his face or voice, the deception would collapse. The detention levels are through here, the security leader said, leading them down a ramp toward the station's core. We've been keeping the Veltar female in maximum security as ordered. Marcus's heart pounded. They were getting close. The detention level was a series of small chambers protected by energy barriers and guarded by automated systems. Most of the cells were empty, but a few contained prisoners of various species. At the end of the corridor was a single chamber with extra security measures. Through the transparent aluminum window, Marcus saw her. Lyrelai was even more beautiful than the images Zira had shared with him, but she looked exhausted. Her pale blue skin was marked with scars and her large dark eyes were dull with despair. She sat on a simple cot, staring at nothing. She's been refusing to cooperate lately, the security leader said. Perhaps the sight of her daughter being tortured will change her attitude. That was Marcus's signal. Now, he said quietly. Zira reached out with her mind, touching the station's computer systems through the electronic interfaces all around them. Her telepathic abilities, enhanced by desperation and love, found the security network and sent it into chaos. Alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. The energy barriers on all the detention cells flickered and died. What's happening? The security leader demanded, reaching for her weapon. Marcus threw off Vex's helmet and shot her with the stunner Dr. Kim had modified from the ship's medical equipment. The other guards went down quickly, caught completely off guard by the sudden attack. Zira, Lyrelai's voice carried clearly through the now open cell entrance. The reunion between mother and daughter was everything Marcus had hoped for and more. They embraced with all 4 of Lyrelai's arms, both of them crying tears that glowed blue in the emergency lighting. I knew you would come, Lyrelai said, speaking in English through her own translation device. She looked at Marcus with gratitude that made him uncomfortable. You must be the human who saved my daughter. Marcus Chen, he said simply. We need to get out of here before they figure out what's happening. But even as he said it, Marcus could hear the sound of running feet and shouting voices echoing through the corridors above them. The station's crew was mobilizing to deal with the security breach. "This way," Dr. Kim said, consulting a map she had downloaded from the station's computer during the confusion. "There's a service tunnel that leads back to the docking bays." They moved quickly through the station's lower levels. Lyra lay supporting Zira when the young Veltar began to tire from the mental effort of maintaining the computer chaos. The service tunnels were narrow and poorly lit, but they provided cover from the search teams. That's when they ran into the ambush. A squad of Cortex warriors was waiting for them at the tunnel junction, led by a massive alien in command armor. His scarred face was twisted with rage. "The famous human," he growled. "I am Commander Thrak, and you have caused me considerable embarrassment." "Good," Marcus replied, pushing Zira and her mother behind him. "I was aiming for humiliation, but embarrassment will have to do." The fight that followed was the hardest of Marcus's life. The Cortex were professional soldiers, well-armed and coordinated. Marcus had only his military training and a desperate need to protect the two Veltar behind him. But he also had something the Cortex didn't expect: help from Lyrelay. The adult Veltar's telepathic abilities were much stronger than her daughter's. She reached into the minds of their attackers and filled them with confusion and fear, making them turn on each other in the darkness of the tunnel. Marcus used the chaos to strike at Thrak directly. The Cortex commander was strong and fast, but Marcus fought with the fury of a man who had found something worth dying for. When it was over, Marcus was bleeding from several wounds and Thrak was unconscious on the tunnel floor. "Can you walk?" Marcus asked Lyrelai. "Yes," she said, though Marcus could see the telepathic effort had exhausted her. "But we must hurry. More will come." They reached the docking bay to find it in complete chaos. Alarms were still blaring, and security teams were running in all directions. In the confusion, no one noticed four figures moving quietly toward Captain Vex's stolen warship. Marcus got them aboard and sealed the airlock just as a group of Cortex warriors realized what was happening. Energy bolts splashed against the ship's hull as Marcus brought the engines online. "Can this thing fight its way out?" Dr. Kim asked, strapping herself into the co-pilot's seat. "We're about to find out," Marcus replied, lifting off from the docking bay. The space around Cortex Station erupted in weapons fire as the defense systems came online. Marcus threw the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers, using every trick he had learned in his military days. Behind them, other Cortex ships were launching from the station, giving chase. But Marcus had one advantage they didn't expect. He knew their ship better than they did, having spent hours studying its systems during the flight to the station. "Hold on," he warned his passengers, then activated the warship's emergency hyperdrive system. The stars stretched into lines as they jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Cortex Station and its angry defenders far behind. In the sudden quiet after their escape, Marcus finally allowed himself to relax. They had done it. Against all odds, they had rescued Lyrelai and escaped from one of the most heavily fortified criminal bases in the galaxy. "Where do we go now?" Dr. Kim asked. "Somewhere safe," Marcus said. "Somewhere the Cortex can't follow us." But even as he said it, he knew their troubles weren't over. The Syndicate would never stop hunting them now. They had made the mistake of humiliating criminals who lived by reputation. Looking back at Zira and Lyrelai, who were holding each other close in the passenger compartment, Marcus realized he didn't care. Some things were worth any risk. "Thank you," Lyrelai said quietly. And Marcus felt the weight of absolute sincerity in her words. "You have given me back my daughter, and my life." "You would have done the same," Marcus replied. "Yes," Lyrelai agreed. "But you actually did it." 2 weeks after their escape from Cortex Station, Marcus learned what it truly meant to be part of a Veltar family. They had found refuge on a neutral trading post called Haven's Rest, deep in the frontier territories where questions weren't asked and backgrounds weren't checked. Marcus had expected to help Lyrelai and Zira find passage to their homeworld, then return to his quiet life as a miner. That wasn't what happened. "You cannot leave," Lyrelai said simply when Marcus mentioned his plans to depart. They were sitting in the small apartment he had rented for the family, sharing a meal of local food that tasted better than anything from Kepler 7. "I've done what I promised," Marcus replied. "Zira is safe. You're both free. You can go home now." Home is where family is, Lyrelai said, and Zira nodded agreement. You are family now. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the intensity of their gratitude. I just did what anyone would do. No, Lyrelai said firmly. You did what a Veltar would do. You protected a child at great risk to yourself with no hope of reward. Among my people, this creates a bond that cannot be broken. What kind of bond? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. Zira took his hand, and suddenly his mind filled with images and emotions. He saw Veltar family structures, complex webs of relationships built on love, sacrifice, and shared experience. He understood that by saving Zira's life, he had become more than a friend or ally. In their culture, he was now family in the truest sense. Soul-bonded, Zira said happily. Like Papa and Mama, but different. You're my guardian father. Marcus pulled his hand away, overwhelmed by the flood of alien concepts. I'm not anyone's father. I'm just a miner who happened to be in the right place at the right time. You fought for us when you could have walked away, Lyrelai said. You risked your life to save mine, knowing I was a stranger. You took us into your protection and called us family. How is this not the action of a father? Before Marcus could answer, an alarm chimed from the apartment's security system. Someone was approaching the building, moving with deliberate stealth. Marcus was instantly alert, his military training taking over. Get away from the windows, he ordered, drawing the pistol he now carried everywhere. Through the security monitor, he could see a single figure moving through the shadows outside. Large, heavily armed, and moving with the fluid grace of a professional killer. Cortex? Dr. Kim asked. She had taken the apartment next door, unwilling to abandon her new research subjects even when Marcus had offered to pay her passage to any destination she chose. Something worse, Marcus said grimly. It's the Harvester. Lyrelai went pale. I know that name. The Syndicate's most feared hunter. They say he has never failed to bring back his targets. Marcus checked his weapon and moved toward the door. Well, there's a first time for everything. You cannot face him alone, Lyrelai protested. The Harvester has killed dozens of warriors. He is cybernetically enhanced and completely without mercy. Then we even the odds, Marcus said. The next few minutes were a blur of preparation. Marcus activated every security measure in the apartment, while Dr. Kim worked frantically to contact the local authorities. Not that Marcus expected much help from Haven's Rest security forces. They were paid to ignore problems, not solve them. He's coming up the stairs, Zira said quietly. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the killer's presence even through the building's walls. Marcus positioned himself behind the reinforced door, knowing it would only slow the Harvester down for a few seconds. In a straight fight, he would lose. The Harvester was stronger, faster, and better armed than any human could be. But Marcus wasn't planning a straight fight. The door exploded inward with tremendous force, reduced to smoking fragments by some kind of energy weapon. Through the smoke came a nightmare figure in black armor, parts of his body clearly mechanical replacements. The Harvester was 7 feet tall and built like a walking weapons platform. Red optical sensors glowed where his eyes should have been, and his left arm had been replaced with some kind of multi-barrel cannon. Marcus Chen, the killer said in a voice like grinding metal. You have been judged guilty of interference with Cortex operations. Surrender the Veltar and your death will be swift. Counteroffer, Marcus said from his position behind an overturned table. Go to hell. The Harvester's response was immediate and devastating. Energy bolts tore through the apartment's walls like they were made of paper. Marcus rolled away from his cover just as it was reduced to ash. But Marcus had one advantage the Harvester didn't know about. He wasn't fighting alone. Lyrelai reached out with her telepathic abilities. Not to attack the killer's mind directly, his cybernetic implants protected him from that, but to interfere with his electronic systems. The Harvester's targeting system flickered and wavered as alien thoughts invaded its circuits. At the same moment, Zira used her own abilities to create false sensor readings, making the killer see multiple copies of Marcus moving through the smoke-filled room. Marcus used the confusion to get close, something that should have been impossible against such a dangerous opponent. He had studied the Harvester's file during their escape from Cortex Station, and he knew the killer's weakness. Like many cyborgs, the Harvester had replaced so much of his original body that he relied on external power sources to function. His armor had to have a power coupling somewhere, probably shielded but not impregnable. Marcus found it on the killer's back, a small panel protected by energy shields. He pressed his last plasma grenade against it and activated the timer. 10 seconds, he warned Lyrelai and Zira, diving for the apartment's reinforced bathroom. The explosion wasn't large, but it was perfectly placed. The harvester's power systems overloaded in a cascade of sparks and smoke. His optical sensors went dark, his weapons powered down, and his enhanced strength faded to normal levels. Marcus emerged from cover to find the galaxy's most feared bounty hunter lying motionless on his apartment floor. "Is he dead?" Dr. Kim asked, peering cautiously around the doorframe. "No," Marcus said, checking the fallen killer's vital signs, "but he'll need extensive repairs before he's operational again." In the silence that followed, Marcus became aware that Zira was staring at him with something like awe. "You defeated the harvester," she said quietly. "No one has ever done that before." "I had help," Marcus pointed out. "Yes," Lyrelai agreed. "You had family." 3 hours later, Marcus was still thinking about those words as he watched local security forces carry away the harvester's unconscious form. Haven's Rest authorities were happy to hand such a dangerous criminal over to the Galactic Council for prosecution. "This will end the hunting," Dr. Kim said as they surveyed the wreckage of Marcus's apartment. "Without the harvester, the Cortex won't risk sending anyone else after you." "For now," Marcus agreed. "But there will always be someone else. The galaxy is full of people who see the Veltar as valuable resources instead of people." "Then we must be ready for them," Lyrelai said firmly. Marcus looked at her in surprise. "We? You are soul-bonded to our family," Lyrelai explained. "This means you share in our joys and sorrows, our victories and defeats. Where we go, you go. What threatens us threatens you. And what threatens you threatens us," Zira added, taking Marcus's hand. Marcus felt the now familiar flood of Veltar emotions and concepts. But this time, instead of being overwhelmed, he found himself understanding. The bond they spoke of wasn't just about obligation or gratitude. It was about choosing to make someone else's welfare as important as your own. "I've never had a family," Marcus admitted quietly. "You have one now," Lyrelai said simply. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of a small research station orbiting a planet he had never heard of before meeting the Veltar. Below them, the world of New Harmony stretched in endless green forests and blue oceans. It was a refugee world, settled by species fleeing persecution and looking for a fresh start. The perfect place for a human, 2 Veltar, and a dedicated xenobiologist to build something new. "The children are progressing well in their lessons," Lyrelai said, joining Marcus at the viewport. She now served as the settlement's telepathic communications coordinator, helping different species understand each other. Marcus nodded, watching a group of young beings from a dozen different worlds playing together in the settlement's central park. Among them, Zira stood out with her pale blue skin and large dark eyes, but she was clearly accepted as just another child. "She's happy," Marcus observed. "She is home," Lyrelai corrected. "As are we all." Dr. Kim approached them from the station's laboratory levels. "The council has approved our proposal," she announced with excitement. "We're officially recognized as a xenological research center. Full funding and legal protection." Marcus smiled. The research center was his idea. A place where species could study each other safely and work together to solve common problems. It was already attracting scientists and scholars from across the galaxy. "There's something else," Dr. Kim continued. "The Terran Authority has sent a representative. They want to discuss making you an official liaison between humanity and the Veltar." "Me?" Marcus asked in surprise. "You're the first human to be accepted into a Veltar family," Dr. Kim explained. "That makes you uniquely qualified to help our species understand each other." Marcus considered this.